The red warning lights flashed across the bridge of the Earth Space Force ship Thunder, filling the command center with an eerie glow. Commander Reed Marshall gripped her captain's chair as another blast rocked the vessel. Her green eyes narrowed at the massive alien ship that filled the main view screen. "Damage report," she called out, keeping her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "Hull breach on Deck 3, Commander. Shields at 15%. Lieutenant Jones' voice cracked as he delivered the news. "We've never seen weapons like these before." Reed knew they were in trouble. What had started as a routine patrol near Jupiter's orbit had turned into a fight for survival. The alien ship had appeared out of nowhere, its dark purple hull seeming to absorb the light from nearby stars. It was at least 5 times the size of the Thunder, and their weapons were cutting through Earth's best defenses like they were made of paper. "Send out another distress signal," Reed ordered, though she knew help wouldn't arrive in time. "And get me a clear shot at their weapons array." Her hands flew across the control panel, trying to find a weakness in the alien vessel. The Thunder might go down, but she wasn't going without a fight. That's when she noticed something odd about the aliens' attack pattern. "They're not aiming to destroy us," she muttered, more to herself than her crew. "They're hurting us." Before she could finish her thought, a brilliant white light filled the bridge. Reed felt a strange tingling sensation throughout her body, and her vision blurred. When her eyes cleared, she wasn't on the Thunder anymore. She found herself in a room unlike anything she'd seen before. The walls seemed to shift colors like the surface of a soap bubble, and the air had a sweet metallic taste. Reed immediately dropped into a defensive stance, her years of combat training kicking in. "Your combat instincts are impressive," a deep voice said from behind her, "but unnecessary." Reed spun around and faced the speaker. He was tall, easily 7 feet, with broad shoulders and pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the strange light. His features were almost human-like, except for the subtle ridges along his forehead and the unusual violet color of his eyes. He wore what appeared to be a military uniform, black with purple trim and strange symbols she assumed indicated rank. "I am Fleet Commander Throne of the Stellar Dominion," he said, watching her with an intensity that made Reed uncomfortable. "And you, Commander Reed Marshall, are the most interesting human I've encountered." Reed kept her stance ready but took a moment to assess her situation. She was unarmed, in an unknown location, facing an alien who somehow knew her name. "Where's my crew?" she demanded. "Safe," Throne replied, taking a step closer. "Your ship is being towed to one of our repair facilities. No one has been harmed." "Why am I here instead of with them?" Throne's lips curved into what might have been a smile. "Because you're different. We've been watching Earth's ships for months now. Other commanders run or surrender. You stayed and fought, even when defeat was certain. You showed intelligence in recognizing our attack pattern, and courage in facing overwhelming odds." He gestured to the room around them. "These are my personal quarters, not a prison cell. Consider yourself my guest." Reed didn't like the way he said that last word. Guests can leave when they want to. "True," Throne acknowledged. "Perhaps potential candidate would be more accurate." "Candidate for what?" Reed asked, though something in his violet eyes told her she might not want to know the answer. Throne moved to a nearby table and pressed a symbol on its surface. A holographic display appeared, showing images of Earth, the Thunder, and what appeared to be Reed's service record. "For something that could change the future of both our species," he said, turning back to face her. "But that explanation will have to wait. For now, rest assured that no harm will come to you or your crew. Tomorrow, I will give you a choice. Your answer will determine not only your fate, but possibly the fate of Earth itself." Reed felt a chill run down her spine. She had trained for combat, for diplomacy, even for first contact scenarios. But something told her that nothing in her training had prepared her for what was coming next. Reed didn't sleep much that night. The room they gave her was comfortable enough, too comfortable for a prison cell. The bed adjusted to her body perfectly, and the temperature stayed exactly how she liked it. But her mind kept racing, trying to figure out what Throne wanted. Morning came, marked by a subtle brightening of the room's shifting walls. Reed had already done her usual workout routine, refusing to let captivity break her habits. She was in the middle of her push-ups when the door dissolved into the wall. Throne stepped in, carrying what looked like a tray of food. "You maintain your discipline even here. Admirable." Reed stood up slowly, wiping sweat from her forehead. "Military habits die hard." "Please eat," he said, placing the tray on a table that seemed to grow from the floor. "I assure you it's compatible with human biology. We've studied your species thoroughly." That last comment made Reed pause, but her stomach growled at the sight of what appeared to be fresh fruit and something like bread. She decided that if they wanted to poison her, they'd had plenty of chances already. As she ate, Throne sat across from her. "Do you know why our species is called the Stellar Dominion?" Reed swallowed a bite of the surprisingly good food. "I assumed it's because you dominate the stars." "Close," Throne said, his violet eyes studying her reactions. "But not quite. We don't dominate through force alone. We survive through selective adaptation. Every member of our species must find their perfect match, someone who challenges them, who makes them stronger." "What does this have to do with me?" Reed asked, though she was starting to get an uncomfortable feeling about where this was going. Throne leaned forward. "Our species is dying, Commander. Our biological need for perfect compatibility means fewer and fewer of us find mates. But then we discovered Earth." His expression changed to something almost like excitement. "Humans are remarkable. You adapt, you survive, you thrive in situations that should break you. You're exactly what we need." Reed put down her food. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" "I'm offering you a choice," Throne said, standing up. "One that could change everything. You can be my mate, a partnership of equals. Together, we could bridge our species, prevent future conflicts, create a lasting peace." "And if I say no?" Reed asked, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Then you remain here as my prisoner while I try to convince you otherwise." Throne's voice was matter-of-fact. "I won't force a bond. It wouldn't work anyway. But I won't let you go either. You're too valuable, too perfect a match." Reed stood up too, anger flashing in her eyes. "So it's not really a choice at all, is it? Be your willing mate or your unwilling prisoner." "There's always a choice," Throne said quietly. "Even if you don't see all the options yet, think about it. You could be the one who prevents a war between our species. The Stellar Dominion is far more advanced than Earth. A conflict would be unfortunate." "That sounds like a threat," Reed said, her hands clenching into fists. "Not a threat. A reality you should consider while making your decision." Throne moved toward the door. "You have 3 Earth days to give me your answer. In the meantime, you're free to explore this section of the ship. Your crew is being well treated in the guest quarters. You can even visit them, if you wish." He paused at the doorway. "One more thing, Commander. Watch the other members of my species. See how they interact. You'll understand better why this matters so much." After he left, Reed sat back down heavily. She looked out the window at the stars, thinking about Earth, her crew, and the impossible decision before her. There had to be another way out of this. She just had to find it. But first, she needed to understand exactly what kind of game she was playing. If she was going to find a solution, she needed more information about the Stellar Dominion and their true intentions. It was time to do some exploring. Reed spent her first day of freedom studying the ship's layout. The areas she could access were vast, but she noticed how certain doors would subtly fade away when she approached them. She wasn't as free as Throne wanted her to believe. While walking through what seemed to be a garden area, she spotted 2 Stellar Dominion officers playing something that looked like chess, but in 3 dimensions with floating pieces. She stopped to watch, remembering Throne's advice about observing his people. "You can join us, Commander Marshall," one of them said, not looking up from the game. "We don't bite." Reed approached carefully. "You know who I am?" Everyone knows who you are, the second officer said, moving a piece that sparked with energy. You're Throne's chosen one. There was something like respect in his tone. I haven't chosen anything yet, Reed corrected them, studying the game. She noticed how each move seemed to create ripples through the other pieces, changing their positions slightly. The first officer nodded. That's exactly why he's interested. Any other human would have already said yes out of fear or ambition. Reed watched as the game grew more complex, pieces moving in ways that seemed to defy physics. What happens if you lose? She asked casually. Both officers looked at her sharply. You understand more than you let on, the second one said. In our culture, every interaction is a test of compatibility. Games, conversations, even battles, they're all ways we prove our worth to potential mates. Reed sat down next to their game. Then teach me how to play. For the next 2 hours, they explained the rules of what they called star chess. It was incredibly complex, with pieces that could move through time as well as space. But Reed started to see patterns in the chaos. On her third practice game, she did something unexpected. Instead of moving her pieces forward or backward in time, she moved them sideways, creating a new timeline altogether. Both officers stared at the board in shock. That's not possible, the first officer said. But it worked, Reed pointed out, as her pieces created a cascade effect that won her the game. The second officer started laughing. Now we understand why Throne is so fascinated. You don't just break rules, you find new ones. Later that evening, Reed found Throne waiting in her quarters. I heard about your game today, he said, looking pleased. Are you spying on me? Reed asked, though she already knew the answer. I'm learning about you, he corrected, just as you're learning about us. Your solution to the game was unprecedented. Reed shrugged. Maybe you're all too used to thinking in straight lines. Perhaps, Throne agreed, stepping closer. Which is exactly why we need humans. Your species thinks in ways we never considered possible. Is that what this is really about? Reed asked. Not just finding mates, but new ways of thinking. Throne's expression became serious. Our empire is stagnating. We've mastered space and time, but we're trapped by our own rigid thinking. Your move in that game proved what I've suspected. Humans could be our salvation. Reed felt the weight of his words. She was starting to understand that this was about more than just her and Throne. But she also noticed something else. Every time she surprised him, his control slipped a little. I'll make you a deal, she said carefully. I'll keep playing your games, keep showing you how humans think. But I want something in return. What? Real answers. About your people, your plans for Earth, everything. Throne studied her for a long moment. Agreed. But remember, Commander, every answer you get brings you closer to your final choice. Maybe, Reed said with a slight smile. Or maybe it brings me closer to finding that third option you haven't considered yet. As Throne left, Reed knew the real game was just beginning. She had 3 days to turn this situation to her advantage, and she intended to use every minute of it. Reed finally visited her crew on the second day of her freedom. She found them in a large, comfortable area that reminded her of a luxury hotel on Earth. Lieutenant Jones jumped to his feet when she entered. Commander, he called out, relief clear in his voice. We were worried about you. The rest of her bridge crew gathered around quickly, all 20 of them looking healthy but concerned. Reed noticed the subtle security measures in the room. The way the windows seemed to absorb impact, the nearly invisible force field at the door. At ease, everyone, she said, noting how they still maintained military discipline despite their comfortable prison. I need a status report. Chief Engineer Miller spoke first, her voice low. The Thunder is being repaired in their dock. They're using technology I've never seen before, Commander. The hull breaches are just healing themselves. That's not all, Jones added, glancing around nervously. We've been watching them. Like you taught us. These aliens, they're more advanced than we thought. Way more advanced. Reed nodded, keeping her voice casual in case they were being monitored. Tell me about the repairs. Every detail. As Miller described the repair process, Reed picked up the hidden message in her crew's words and gestures, a code they had developed for situations just like this. The real message was clear. Her crew had discovered something important. During their captivity, they had managed to hack into a small part of the ship's computer system through their room's entertainment unit. What they found was disturbing. The Stellar Dominion hadn't just found Earth by accident. They had been studying humanity for years. The whole regeneration is remarkable, Miller continued, but her hand spelled out more. The aliens had hidden outposts throughout the solar system. They had been testing Earth's defenses, analyzing human behavior, looking for something specific. Reed kept her face neutral as she received the news. Their capture hadn't been random. The Stellar Dominion had been watching her specifically, studying her responses to various situations. Fromm's interest wasn't just personal, it was part of a larger plan. Keep monitoring the repairs, Reed ordered, really meaning keep gathering information, and stay alert. As she talked with other crew members, more pieces of the puzzle emerged. The Stellar Dominion had been particularly interested in human adaptability, in their ability to find unexpected solutions. They had run countless simulations of first contact scenarios, looking for the perfect way to approach Earth. We're maintaining exercise routines, Security Chief Parker reported, which was code for "we're ready to fight if needed," keeping our spirits up. Reed understood. Her crew was ready to act if she gave the word. But she also knew that any violent resistance would be pointless against the Dominion's superior technology. They needed a smarter approach. Keep doing what you're doing, she told them carefully. That's an order. As she prepared to leave, Jones caught her eye. Commander, he said, we believe in you. Whatever you decide, we're with you. The simple statement hit Reed hard. Her crew knew something big was happening, even if they didn't know the details, and they trusted her to make the right choice. Back in her quarters, Reed stared out at the stars, thinking about everything she had learned. The Stellar Dominion wasn't just interested in her as a potential mate for Throne. They were testing humanity's potential as a species. Her choice wouldn't just affect her future. It would affect Earth's relationship with this powerful alien civilization. She had one day left to make her decision. But now she knew she wasn't just deciding for herself. Her crew's loyalty, Earth's future, and the strange attraction growing between her and Throne. All of it had to be considered. The game had become much bigger than she had imagined. But maybe that also meant there were more possible moves to make. With only 24 hours left to make her decision, Reed decided to take a risk. Instead of waiting for Throne to find her, she asked the ship's computer to lead her to him. She found him in what appeared to be a training room, practicing combat moves against holographic opponents. Reed watched silently as Throne moved with incredible speed and precision. His fighting style was nothing like Earth's martial arts. He seemed to predict his opponent's moves before they made them. After a few minutes, he noticed her presence. "Have you made your decision already?" he asked, dismissing the holograms with a wave. "No," Reed replied. "But I have questions. Real ones this time." Throne studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Computer, seal the room. No recordings." He turned back to Reed. "Ask. Show me why your species is dying," she said firmly. Something like pain flashed across Throne's face. He pressed a sequence of commands into a wall panel, and suddenly they were surrounded by a holographic display of the Stellar Dominion's history. 300 years ago, there were billions of us, he explained, as images of vast cities and space stations floated around them. Now, we number less than 1,000,000. The images changed to show their biology. Reed watched in fascination as Throne explained how their species evolved. The same traits that made them powerful, their ability to process complex information, their perfect memory, their long lifespans, had also cursed them. "We can only reproduce with a perfectly compatible partner," Throne said, his voice heavy. "Our minds must align, Our genetic codes must match within exact parameters. Finding such a match has become nearly impossible. Because you're too similar, Reed realized. You've evolved so far in one direction that there's no room for variation anymore. Yes. Throne walked through a hologram showing population decline. Each generation, fewer matches are found. Those who don't find matches live for centuries, watching our species slowly fade away. Reed thought about the game she had played yesterday, how surprised they had been by her different way of thinking. That's why you're so interested in humans. We're different enough to break the pattern. You're the first species we found that might be compatible, Throne confirmed. You think differently, adapt quickly, find solutions we would never consider. But you're also similar enough that biological compatibility is possible. And that's why you chose me specifically. Throne turned to face her directly. I've watched you for months, Reed. The way you command your crew, how you think in crisis situations, your ability to see patterns others miss. You're everything we need. Everything I need. The honesty in his voice made Reed's heart beat faster, but she pressed on. And the other Dominion leaders, do they all agree with this plan? No, Throne admitted. Many think it's too risky. They fear that introducing human unpredictability into our species could destroy what we are. That's why this has to work. You and I could prove it's possible. Reed watched the holograms showing the dying worlds of the stellar Dominion. She thought about her crew's discoveries, about the games she'd played, about every interaction she'd had on this ship. A pattern was emerging, but she wasn't sure she liked what it showed. What aren't you telling me? She asked quietly. Throne was silent for a long moment. If this fails, if we can't find a way to save our species, there are those who believe we should take what we need by force. Earth's population is large enough that even a small percentage of compatible humans could revive our numbers. Reed felt cold. You'd invade Earth. I would oppose it, Throne said quickly. But I am only one commander. That's why your choice matters so much. You could help prevent a war. Reed looked at the holograms one last time before they faded away. She had wanted answers, and now she had them. But they only made her final decision even harder. With less than a day left, she needed to think carefully about her next move. The fate of 2 species might depend on it. The alert klaxons woke Reed from a troubled sleep. Red lights pulsed through her quarters as the ship's computer announced something in the Dominion's language. She was still trying to understand what was happening when Throne burst through her door. Your crew, he said, his violet eyes intense. They're attempting an escape. Reed jumped to her feet, fully awake now. What? They've managed to override some of our systems, Throne explained quickly. They've taken control of a section of the ship and are trying to reach the Thunder. Part of Reed felt proud. Her crew had obviously been planning this for days, using the computer access they'd discovered to prepare their escape. But she also knew it was doomed to fail. Take me to them, she demanded. Now. Throne hesitated for just a moment, then nodded. As they ran through the corridors, Reed saw organized chaos around them. Dominion crew members were rushing to contain the situation, but they weren't using lethal force. They were trying to capture, not kill. They reached a security center where monitors showed the situation. Lieutenant Jones and Chief Miller had led a brilliant plan. They'd used their knowledge of the ship's repair systems to create a distraction in one area while making their real move in another. Even now, they were showing the kind of creative thinking that had so impressed the Dominion. Let me talk to them, Reed said. Throne looked at her carefully. You know this is your crew's chance to rescue you. You could try to escape with them. Do you trust me or not? Reed challenged him. After a tense moment, Throne pressed a few commands into a console. You can speak to them now. Reed took a deep breath. This is Commander Marshall to all Thunder crew members. Stand down immediately. That's an order. There was a long pause before Jones' voice came back. Commander, are you under duress? Negative, Lieutenant. I'm speaking freely. Reed watched the monitors as she spoke. You've done brilliantly. But this isn't the way. Stand down and return to your quarters. I promise you won't be punished for this attempt." She looked at Throne as she said the last part, and he nodded in confirmation. "Commander," Miller's voice came next, "we found out what they're planning. About Earth. We can't just—" "I know everything," Reed interrupted, "and I'm handling it. Trust me like you always have. Stand down." Slowly, the dots on the monitor representing her crew stopped moving. One by one, they surrendered to the Dominion security teams. Reed watched with a mixture of pride and sadness. "They would have died for you," Throne said quietly. "They would have died for Earth," Reed corrected him. "Just like I would." She turned to face him fully. "And that's something your people need to understand." "You've made your choice then." Reed nodded slowly. "Yes, but not the choice you gave me. I won't be your mate or your prisoner." She held up her hand as he started to protest. "Instead, I'm going to be your equal partner in negotiations between Earth and the Dominion." Throne's expression showed surprise, then understanding. "You're changing the terms." "Exactly. Humans don't like being forced into binary choices. We find alternatives." Reed stepped closer to him. "You need us. Not just me, but all of humanity. And we could benefit from your knowledge and technology. But it has to be a real partnership, not a forced one." "The Council won't like this," Throne warned, but she could see he was intrigued. "Then we'll prove it can work, starting with us." Reed held his gaze. "I'm interested in you, Throne. I have been since we met. But any relationship between us has to develop naturally, not under threat." The alarms had stopped, and in the sudden quiet, Reed waited for his response. Everything hung on what he would say next: her future, her crew's fate, and possibly the future of both their species. 3 months later, Reed stood before the Stellar Dominion's High Council. The circular chamber was filled with the most powerful members of their species, their pale blue skin and violet eyes all fixed on her. Throne stood beside her, not as her captor or potential mate, but as her ally. "You ask us to change thousands of years of tradition," one council member said, his voice echoing in the chamber, "to risk our species' future on an untested theory." Reed stepped forward. "With respect, it's not untested anymore." She gestured to the holographic displays around them, showing the results of the past 3 months' work. 20 human-Dominion partnerships have already formed naturally, without coercion. 5 of them show genetic compatibility markers higher than your traditional matches. Another council member leaned forward. "And what of you and Commander Throne? You were the test case, yet you still refuse to formalize a mate bond." "Because we're doing something more important," Reed replied confidently. "We're proving that humans and the Dominion can work together as equals." Throne activated another display, showing the joint projects they'd started. Earth ships were being upgraded with Dominion technology, while human scientists were helping the Dominion understand new ways of thinking about old problems. The results were impressive. 3 months ago, I gave Commander Marshall a choice between being my mate or my prisoner. Throne addressed his peers. She chose neither. Instead, she showed us a better way. Isn't that exactly what we were looking for? A species that could help us break free from our rigid patterns. The chamber erupted in discussion, voices rising and falling in their musical language. Reed waited patiently, knowing this was the moment everything would be decided. Her crew had been returned to Earth as a show of good faith, carrying the first draft of a peace treaty. Now everything depended on whether the Dominion could adapt as well as humans could. The head counselor raised her hand for silence. "Commander Marshall, step forward." Reed did so, holding her head high. "You have shown us something we did not expect," the head counselor said. "We sought to save our species through controlled breeding, but you have shown us that true survival comes through growth and change." She paused, looking at each council member. "The treaty with Earth will be approved." Relief flooded through Reed, but she kept her expression neutral. This was just the first step. "And what of Commander Throne's original proposal?" Another counselor asked. "Will you now agree to be his mate?" Reed smiled, glancing at Throne. Over the past 3 months, they had worked together, learned from each other, and yes, grown closer, but they'd done it on their own terms. "Commander Throne and I have a different proposal," she said. "We want to lead the first joint human-Dominion space exploration mission. There are still vast areas of the galaxy we haven't explored. Together, our species could go further than either could alone." The council chamber was silent for a moment before the head counselor actually smiled, the first time Reed had seen one of them do so. "You continue to surprise us, human. Very well. The mission is approved." Later, as Reed and Throne walked through the ship that would be their new home for the next year, she felt a sense of satisfaction. The impossible choice had led to an impossible solution, one that would benefit both their species. "You never did give me a direct answer," Throne said quietly. "About us." Reed stopped and turned to him. "I didn't have to. We found our own way, didn't we? And we'll keep finding it, day by day, choice by choice." Throne reached out and took her hand, a very human gesture he had learned from her. "Together." "Together," Reed agreed, squeezing his hand. "After all, that's what humans do best. We don't just adapt to the future, we help shape it." As they looked out at the stars through the ship's window, Reed knew they were starting something entirely new. Not just a relationship or a mission, but a whole new chapter in the story of both their species. And this time, everyone had a choice in how that story would be written.